What's up, adventurers? My name is Platinum Phoenix, and welcome to a sort of bonus episode for Fire Emblem Engage. During my Let's Play of the game, I made bios for every single emblem ring in the game, and emblem bracelets for the DLCs. So I wanted to just have a place where it's easier to find them if anyone wanted to know my thoughts about each of the emblem rings, or my opinions on who each emblem ring is best on, or the best of the emblem rings in general. I will say there are spoilers in these bios, so if you want to avoid those, I have a full Let's Play of at least the main story of Fire Emblem Engage, which is where all the spoilers would be, on my channel, or I would recommend playing the game before watching all of the bios, just because of the amount of spoilers that this has. But with that being said, if you're still here and just want to see what I have to say about the emblem rings, let's go ahead and get to the bios. So, Emblem Marth is very obviously designed to work with the main character, or your character to be more exact, but is a pretty good all-around character, all things considered. He works a lot better with sword characters, but can work pretty well with anyone. I would recommend not putting him on mages, though. Anyone who uses magic as their primary source of attacking, I would recommend steering clear of, because Marth increases strength, dexterity, and speed, so magic users don't get a real buff in their attacking stat due to that. But he does do something really nice to basically every single unit you could put him on, which is makes them attack more than once a turn. Basically, speed, if you have high speed, you are able to attack opponents twice during each combat, which is really nice to speed up how fast combats can be, and to speed up how much damage you can do a turn. And that's on top of his special skill, Divine Speed, which just lets you do a second attack for free when you're engaged to him, which is phenomenal, by the way. It's just super nice to be able to do, and is why I was able to do 3 attacks per turn during that last chapter. Emblem Celica is a really good mage emblem. And by that I mean she works perfectly on almost any tome user. And by tome user, I mean anyone that uses those books, which are called tomes, to shoot fire or lightning or whatever. She's really good on anyone who uses magic, basically, because she raises magic by 2 on her stats. She also raises the resist stat, which makes the unit a lot more resistant to magic as well, making them even better to go mage against mage. And on top of that, with Warp Ragnarok, she basically can be really good at positioning units exactly where you want them to be very quickly into battle. So if you know that your mage unit, or whatever unit you have her equipped to, can deal with a lot of enemies at once, you can engage her at the very beginning of battle and just kind of throw your unit across the battlefield and just wreak havoc against the enemies, which is really fun to do for one, and really strategic to do for 2, because it just makes it a lot easier for you to position where you want to be. The other thing is Seraphim. Like I said, during the actual combat, Seraphim is her book that allows her to do extra combat damage against the Corrupted. It's actually effective against the Corrupted, and one of the only weapons we've seen so far that's effective against the Corrupted. So it's very beneficial to have. Also, she has the unique ability Echo, which just allows her to basically attack twice at 50% power, which, combined with Seraphim against the Corrupted, is very good because it gets the double power, or the triple might, from being effective, and that triple might does not be affected from the half damage. So it's just really nice. Emblem Sigurd is a really good emblem, actually. He works really well with basically anyone because of his trait of improving mobility. He improves mobility a lot, as well as his main, or one of his main starting abilities, being able to increase movement by another 5. So he basically can almost double anyone's movement stat, which is really good for an emblem. The other thing to go over with Sigurd is that I would actually recommend putting him on a healer more than almost anyone else, mostly because healers are usually on foot and are usually kind of slow compared to other units, so giving them Sigurd actually allows them to be a lot faster when they're engaged and allows them to reach units to heal them a lot easier than they would if they were just on foot. The other stats that Emblem Sigurd increases are dexterity, defense, and build, which just means the unit that is equipped with them is harder to hit, is more defensive and can tank more hits when they are hit, and can carry heavier equipment without being slowed down. He also has Rider's Bane as his unique weapon to start out, which is effective against cavalry, so you can use your faster movement to take on the faster cavalry of the enemies using Rider's Bane. Emblem Roy. Emblem Roy is actually very good on tanks, and specifically, he's very good on the one that's already holding him in Diamat. Diamat has very high defenses and is actually really good at just taking hits. And since Roy grants 5 HP, 1 strength, and 1 resistance, it just makes him more tanky, which is really nice to have for future fights. The other things that Roy is good at is just being on the front line and doing a lot of damage, because he has a special move that allows him to spread fire out wherever he hits with his emblem attack, which if the enemy is standing in the fire at the end of their turn, they just take extra damage, which is really good if you have them in like a choke point or in a bottleneck where they can't really move forward, to just hit them with fire and kind of just stand there and block their way. Unfortunately, the fire is not able to knock them out by itself, but with you attacking as well, it should make them a lot easier to defeat. But that's really all there is to say about Roy, and the other emblem is Emblem Leif. Leif is also great on tanks. We just got 2 very tanky emblems this chapter. Leif is also really versatile in combat, actually, being able to wield all 3 main weapons, having an axe at the beginning, then getting a lance and a sword later on as you raise your bond level with them. And he also just grants 3 HP, 1 defense, and 3 build, making your units being able to hold more equipment and weapons than they are able to normally is just pretty nice. And putting him on a unit like Vander, for example, makes him very quick and very good at holding stuff, that he can just hold like 3 really big axes and do a ton of damage on all of his turns. He also has the emblem move Quadruple Hit, which is effective on almost every single unit because it hits with an axe, a sword, a lance, and a bow. So you're basically going to break the unit no matter what, and it's very comparable to what I said about the Emblem 3 houses. The other thing is Emblem Leif has the ability Adaptable, which means that every time that the unit is in combat, the unit will always use the correct weapon against the enemy. So if the enemy has a lance, you will always have an axe. If the enemy has a sword, you will always have a lance. And if the enemy has an axe, you will always have a sword. And it's just really nice not to have to strategize every single move when using Emblem Leif, and just being able to allow him to kind of change your weapon on the fly. And it also, since it gives you proficiency in all 3 of the weapons, it allows the user or the unit to basically become any class they want, which is really nice as well. Emblem Lucina, or as I like to call her, Marth 2.0, as the Divine Dragon mistaken her as the Hero King, and she said that she can't replace him, but I would beg to differ, because she is a very all-around emblem. She grants 1 dexterity, 1 speed, and 2 luck, which means over time, as you bond with her more, she makes you harder to hit, harder to crit, and she makes you attack more often, or attack more per turn. So she's just really good on any unit. She also has the emblem attack All for One, which causes all allies within 2 spaces of the unit that is equipped with her to chain attack with you. It's basically the doubles that Hyacinth used, except your actual allies are the ones that are chain attacking, so they're probably stronger. But with that being said, we go from one of the most versatile emblems to one of the more straightforward ones in Emblem Lyn. She is great on bow units, specifically Outcrest. It's almost like she was designed to work on Outcrest and Outcrest alone. She grants 1 resistance, 1 dexterity, and 1 speed, meaning that the unit will take more magical attacks easier, be able to dodge more attacks, and can attack more per turn, kind of like Lucina does, but with a little bit less to give in that respect. She also has Astra Storm, which is her emblem attack, which is insane, by the way, because it has a range of 10 spaces, so it has the same range as Warp Ragnarok, and it fires 5 arrows at 30% damage, which means she is basically combining my favorite parts of Warp Ragnarok and Lone Star Rush and making it into one amazing attack. The only problem is, since it doesn't actually teleport you there, you don't get really any follow-ups on somebody that you shoot from that far away. But an upside is there's several unit types that get bonus range to that attack. Specifically, all of Outcrest's specific classes gets plus 10 to that attack. So he can shoot up to 20 spaces, which is insane. That's almost every single battlefield size in the entire game. And you saw for the last, 14, 15 episodes, that Warp Ragnarok is basically half of a battlefield, so doubling its range, you can hit anything, and it's amazing. Emblem Eirika and Emblem Ephraim. They are the Azure Twins, hence the name Ring of the Azure Twins. And the reason I want to go over both of them is because the ring changes how it works depending on who is in the lead of the ring. And the ring very specifically has ways of changing which emblem you're actually using at which time. So, going over Emblem Eirika first, because she's the one that is in the front and talks. She is, or I guess I should say, they are both great emblems for support characters. Basically, any cavalry unit you can put them on is amazing, or any support character you can put them on is also amazing. And they have something very unique. They have 3 sync skills right off the bat. The first one is called Night and Day, which allows them to switch the ring between the Lunar Brace, which has Emblem Eirika within the lead, as the lead of the ring, and the Solar Brace, which has her brother, Emblem Ephraim, in the lead. And the Lunar Brace, whenever the unit attacks with the Lunar Brace, they will deal extra damage. I believe they will deal 20% extra damage based on the foe's defense stat. So it's just great for causing extra damage. And the Solar Brace heals the unit by 30% of the damage that the unit deals whenever they are attacking. So if they initiate combat, they just get 30% of the damage they dealt as health, which is super helpful for some units, specifically like tanks. Super love that ability. And there's technically a third mode called the Eclipse mode, which has both of them working together. But it's kind of weird how you get it, and the only benefit that you get from it is that you get both the benefit of the Lunar Brace and the Solar Brace at the same time. The other thing about the Ring of the Azure Twins is that their emblem attack is called Twin Strike, which attacks twice, as the name implies, once with a sword and once with a lance, and it deals extra damage if it's equipped to either a dragon unit, aka the Divine Dragon, or a cavalry unit, which is why they are so good on cavalry units. Also, just to bring it up, the ring grants 1 magic, 1 dexterity, and 2 luck, just making them a decent unit for anyone based on the dexterity and luck, and slightly better for magic users based on the magic that they give. Emblem Ike. As I said during the battle, I heard he fights for his friends. But in that same vein, he is amazing on any tank units you have. Specifically, Diamant is a really good unit for him. Mostly because Diamant uses a sword, and Ike eventually gets a sword to use. So it kind of balances out, as well as Ike just giving extra strength, which is really good for Diamant. Mostly because at this point he's been falling behind, but with the extra strength he would be able to catch up pretty quickly. The other things are, he's very, very similar to Emblem Hector, in the fact that he's a tank unit that can basically go in the front of any battle and just take hits. Ike has an ability called Long's Friend, which makes the unit incredibly tanky by basically halving any damage that they would take, in exchange for them losing all ability to actually avoid attacks. But even with the losing the ability to avoid attacks, being able to halve any damage is an incredible skill. And also, Ike's hammer, like I went over in the actual chapter, is a smash weapon, and is actually our second example of a smash weapon on an emblem. The other one being Amir on the Emblem Three Houses. But like I said, I don't really like smash weapons, so the hammer isn't super helpful. It does have effectiveness on armored units, so any armored units he's very good against. But other than that, I just find it more of a liability than anything else, and would mostly prefer to just use the weapons of the units themselves to avoid the downside of the smash weapons. So Emblem Micaiah is our first example of a support class emblem, which is kind of weird. And also, I hate to say it because I love Yunaka. She's awful with Micaiah. She's just not good. They clash in what they're trying to do so badly that it's not even funny. Micaiah wants to be on a mage class. Specifically, any healer is amazing with Micaiah. Micaiah gives 1 magic, 2 resistance, and 2 luck, just making the healer more resistant to taking attacks, so being on the front line is less of a threat to them. And also, the emblem ability of Micaiah is Great Sacrifice, which takes all of her health to heal every single one of your units on the field, which is insane, and also levels up the unit that is engaged with Micaiah so quickly that it is the most ludicrous thing possible. I recommend putting it either on Ephraim or Jean because they are our two healers at the moment, and specifically putting it on Jean levels him up to a point so quickly where he's just not useless anymore. And it's amazing, and I highly recommend it, and it's probably what I'm going to do. Emblem Corrin is, like I said during the chapter, an amazing emblem. Specifically, she's good on almost anyone. Unfortunately, they put her on the worst character that she could possibly be on for this chapter, but I like putting her on to thief classes. And the reason for that is because she is one of the few emblems that has a sync skill, and her sync skill is called the Dragon Vein. And it works differently for almost every type of unit, and for thieves, it allows them to make a 3x3 area of fog that allows them to have extra avoid, or to add extra avoid to their stats basically for free. And all they have to do is have Corrin equipped to them. Corrin also has the skill Dreadful Aura, which just means that whenever the unit attacks while engaged with Corrin, the foe that they attacked and foes that are one space away from foes that they attacked are unable to move for the next turn, which is very good for just being able to control how your enemies are able to move. And like I said, really good on thieves that are really good at running in, dodging a bunch of hits, and just hitting an opponent and causing basically everyone around you to not be able to move is an amazing skill. The emblem attack that Corrin has is Torrential Roar, which is, in all honesty, a relatively weak emblem attack, but it does hit multiple opponents as long as they're standing in a straight line, and it causes the ground under those opponents that it hits to become water, which slows them down, making them easier to control where they can move the next turn, just like her Dreadful Aura skill. The last thing is that Corrin grants 5 HP, 1 magic, and 1 resistance, which means she's technically better on magic units, but giving more HP and more resistance is basically good on anyone. And like I said, thieves' whole things are avoiding hits, but having the little bit of extra HP in case they do get hit is just a nice thing to have. Emblem Byleth is an amazing support emblem, specifically on anyone who has very high mobility. So giving him to Hortensia is not the worst option. Byleth has an emblem attack named Goddess's Dance, or Goddess Dance, which is amazing because it lets all units on adjacent space to the unit that uses the move act again in a turn. So basically, it allows units to move twice, to do 2 actions, to fight twice, to heal. Basically, it allows them to do anything they want. And if you have a unit with high mobility that has Byleth, you can get them in the middle of 4 units if you position them correctly, use Goddess's Dance, and all 4 of them get to act again. You can end battles very quickly using this, and it's one of the better support emblems out there. Byleth also has Instruct as a skill, which grants stat bonuses to adjacent units at the start of a turn. But the stat bonuses are based on whoever is holding the ring, and that can make it semi-unreliable because unless you know what every single person's stat bonus is, it's kind of hard to work or to plan around it. But the biggest thing about Byleth, and the thing that makes Byleth so unique, is that Byleth's equip weapon is not like any other equip weapon. Byleth's equip weapon is different for every single unit. Byleth has 8 different equip weapons at level 1, and each of them work differently, have different effects, and are only accessible by different units. So, Lance units will usually get Arbhar, which is the spears that the Emblem Three Houses has given us. Axe units will usually get Emir, which again is the axe that the Three Houses has given us. There's a shield that tanks get. There's a necklace, I think, that support units get, that healers get, and everything. There is that lance that Hortensia was using during the fight that increases damage, I think, with magic power, which is really good on magic units. It's amazing how versatile that Byleth is, and as long as you're okay with the unit playing at least a semi-support role, Byleth is amazing. Emblem Tiki is a great all-around emblem, actually. You wouldn't think it, but being able to transform into a dragon is a great asset, and if it wasn't obvious, that was obviously sarcasm, but she has a couple of unique things. She actually grants several different attacks upon transforming into the dragon. She grants Eternal Claw, which is the move she was trying to use against us, but she never had the chance. Eternal Tail, which is our Tail Slam, I believe is what it's called, which she uses the dragon's tail to attack, and her Elemental Breath, which is actually interesting because each of her each unit that she's equipped to will determine what Elemental Breath she will have when she is engaged. There are 4 in total. She can have Fire Breath, Ice Breath, Flame Breath, or Dark Breath. And depending on who she's equipped to, determines what breath attack she has. But Tiki also grants 5 HP, 1 defense, and 2 luck, making her pretty good on tanks, allowing them to just take more hits and have more HP to take the hits. But I would mostly say that she's best on units with high mobility or high movement, which allows her to get into the front of the battlefield and then just transform into a dragon and kind of wreak havoc on everything. She also gets a skill that when the unit levels up, it grants them more stat points than they would get normally. So say a unit levels up and they would only get say 2 HP, 1 strength, and 1 magic, then maybe they would get 3 HP, 2 strength, 1 magic, and 1 resistance instead, which would be really nice and is actually super helpful. Emblem Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude. They are very good emblems. And by very good, I mean they are some of the best emblems in the game. They work on almost anyone, although I recommend highly to put them on a physical user. So anyone that uses non-magic weapons is what I would recommend putting them on, because they raise strength, dexterity, and defense, making people harder to hit. When they are hit, they take hits better, and with the +2 strength, they just hit a lot harder. The other things are that the Emblem Three Houses get all 3 of the 3 houses legendary weapons as they level up through their bond levels. So it gives the users the ultimate amount of variety in weapons that they can use, so they basically can never be caught off guard against an enemy with the wrong weapon. The other things are, like I said, Ayer, the axe. is the first smash weapon that we've seen in the game, which is really nice to have against all the armored enemies we've seen. And they have the special ability to use the combat arts, which are skills that they can use while equipped that uses your equip gauge. So it shortens the amount of turns that you are going to be equipped from 3 down to however many you have, or however many it costs to use the art. But in exchange, you get to do very powerful attacks. You get 3 of them, and all 3 of them are very strong and basically are very worth having in a fight. But other than that, there's not much else to go over. They're very strong. I recommend putting them on somebody with a lot of movement already so that they can get into place and fight whoever you need them to fight. And other than that, I think they're just really good emblems. So, Emblem Hector. You would think that this giant hulking man would be great on tanks. And you'd be correct. But he's not only great on tanks. He's basically great on anyone that you would want to have more defense. I personally actually love putting him on healers, because healers are by far the, I would say, squishiest units, and by putting Hector on one of them, it makes them a lot harder to take out, and it makes it a lot easier for you to chase after your front lines without worrying that the enemies are going to just go around your tanks and target your healers. On that same vein, Hector grants 1 strength, 2 defense, and 1 build, making it so anyone he's equipped to can carry more and take more hits. He also has a skill called Impenetrable, which you actually saw in that last battle, which raises both the defense and resistance of the unit that he is engaged to if they are attacked. And that is actually why he survived the critical hit against Phoenix during that last little bout with him. He also has the ability Storm's Eye, which is, I believe, only our second example of a emblem having an emblem attack, in heavy air quotes, that is not actually an attack. Storm's Eye is actually a stance, and what it does is during the next enemy's turn and then your next turn, during the enemy's turn, once you use Storm's Eye, you cannot be broken, which is very nice. During your next turn, during the enemy's turn, you will always follow up, which is also nice since you can't be broken or anything. During your next turn, the enemies are not able to follow up, so you get just basically a free hit against them. And there is a caveat to it. It only works with axes and swords because, you know, this guy is a hulk of a man and only likes to carry around axes and swords for some reason. But even still, it is a great ability, especially if you want to just stand in the middle and take hits. It's basically the ultimate defensive move that allows enemies to just swarm him and let the unit just live forever. Oh, Emblem Soren is an amazing tome user emblem because he has several things that go great for them. He grants 1 magic, 2 resistance, and 1 dexterity at level 1, or at bond level 1, which is great for any magic user, but is especially great for offensive magic users. He also has a skill called Flare, which basically allows him to, whoever he's equipped to and engaged with, will have the ability of, whenever they are attacking with a tome, the opponent's resistance will be lowered by 20%, just making them easier to defeat whenever you are using a tome. And the last thing that I really need to go over for him is that he has a skill or an attack called Bolting, which is a tome in and of itself. It's a rare tome that only he has, and it gives a unit a very long-ranged attack. I believe it has a range of like 10 or something like that. And it's something they can use every single turn. So thinking about it, it's like having Warp Ragnarok without having to teleport, and with being able to do it every single turn. So you get the damage out of it, you get the long range out of it, and you're not right next to the opponent, so they can't counterattack you. It's a great attack and something great to keep in mind. Emblem Camilla. The first thing I want to bring up is I find it really cool that they decided to design her emblem bracelet based off of like her head, her tiara and everything. And I'm pretty sure it's also the emblem, or not the emblem, the symbol of Nor, which is also very cool that they would base it off of that. But getting into her as an emblem is not the greatest thing, because she is, in fact, one of the weakest emblems, and probably my least favorite emblem in the game. Let's start with the good. She works really good on anyone who wants a boost of movement. Mostly because she has an ability called Soar that grants +2 to movement, which is basically just a weaker version of what Sigurd was. So you really have to take that into account when using her. She can help with movement, but not to the point of other movement-based emblems have been able to. She does give you the ability to fly, though, which is very helpful to get across water and fire places. She also grants +3 to HP, +1 to resistance, and +2 to speed. So she can help make units a little bit harder to take out and a little bit easier to deal more damage with, but it's kind of hard to recommend her overall. Also, her emblem attack of Dark Inferno is just not a great attack because it always will be in a pattern around her and not just like a standard attack in front of her or something. So it's always semi-unreliable unless you have the pattern completely memorized, and it's kind of hard to use because of that. It also just sets the world on fire. So if you want your other units to be able to walk through there, it's just not a good thing to use. And the last thing is her axe is the Bolt Axe, or her engaged weapon to start out is the Bolt Axe, which is a magic axe that works a lot like a throwing weapon, but I believe actually does a little bit less damage because the distance part of the axe works on magic, while the axe itself works on strength. So if you're going to use her as effectively as possible, you have to have a unit that's both really good at dealing physical damage as well as magical damage, which is not a whole ton of units. Emblem, Chrom, and Robin are amazing emblems, if I'm being perfectly honest. They work almost on any unit that you want them on because they increase both dexterity and speed, making them just an overall good emblem. The other thing is you will always get a follow-up attack because Robin always acts as a second character, basically. So whenever you attack, you will always get a chain attack, so to say, because Robin will always be right there to fight alongside you. It's kind of like he does with Chrom. But the other reason that it's so good is because of the fact that since Chrom is mainly a melee fighter or a physical fighter, focusing on strength, and Robin is mainly a magical fighter focusing on magic, they balance out to work on almost anyone because they effectively raise both type of attacking stats. They also have the Levin sword as their weapon, which is similar to the bolt axe that Camilla gave us last episode, but it works fairly similarly, where the sword part acts as a physical damaging weapon while the ranged attack is a magic attack. And their engage attack is called the Great Levin Sword. For some reason, this one's just better than the rest, I guess. But it deals a magical attack that actually is affected by the unit's physical damage. So it's a magical attack, so it's off of the opponent's resistance, but it goes off of the unit's strength. So it's actually really good on physical attackers, or using my Pokemon terminology, I guess, on strength-based units. So Emblem Veronica is simply a great support emblem. Specifically on any magic users, she is incredible because she amplifies magic as well as resistance and luck. It just gives them a little bit more like oomph behind their magical attacks, and since she grants a staff upon being engaged with, she grants very powerful magic as well. The other thing about her is, and the reason I say that she's really good on support characters, is because support characters like to stay back. And Veronica specifically likes to stay back because of her engage skill, which is Summon Hero, which allows you to pick either a red orb, a blue orb, a green orb, or a colorless orb, which determines if you summon a sword user, a spear user, an axe user, or a special unit, which is tome users, staff users, and thieves, or bow users as well. But being able to summon a fabrication just to fight for you is super helpful, because it's basically just like you get an extra turn to do, even if it does only 2 damage. That's 2 damage you wouldn't be able to do otherwise. It's another unit that can take a hit for one of your main units, which is really nice. And they still follow the weapon triangle. So even if it's only 2 damage, it can still break people, which is an incredible skill to have. So I would recommend putting it on someone that has decent mobility, someone that has decently high magic already, and a support unit. One of my favorites to put Veronica on is Clan, just because he's a very powerful unit on his own right. But with Veronica, he gets a little bit more power. If he's falling behind because he is a little bit of a slower character, he can always engage and summon a fabrication, and it's just really nice. The Divine Dragon, or the Fire Emblem, as I will call him, is probably the most unique emblem in the game. By far, actually. The bond levels work differently than every other emblem in the game, because the Divine Dragon stays a unit and isn't just an emblem. So, the bond level is based on your support level with the other units. So, support level C is level 5 bond, support level B is level 10, and support level A is level 20. This is why, earlier in the game, I recommended getting as many people bond level up with the Divine Dragon as possible, because it really helps you to have better options after this point once the Divine Dragon becomes the Fire Emblem. The other thing, like I said, is that the Divine Dragon is still a unit, which means he's not actually synced to anyone, which means he doesn't really have sync skills, but only equipped skills. And when equipping with a unit, he stays a unit still. So he gets the benefit of having equipped power-ups, as well as being a unit as well. And he can still engage with units that are already equipped or synced with other emblems. So it's not limited to only units without emblems either. But with that being said, I want to go over the basic things with him, because those are the more unique things about him that are more complicated because he works differently than almost every other emblem. But the more basic things is that he grants 5 HP, 1 defense, and 1 speed at level 1, so if you have no bond levels. But more than likely, you have bond or support levels with at least some of your units. So those stats are probably going to be higher with a lot of the units you engage with. The Fire Emblem's engage attack is called Dragon Blast, which deals both a physical sword attack and a magical attack. And when the opposite unit, or the unit that he engages with, uses the move, it's called Bond Blast, I believe. And it's a physical attack and a magic attack based on what weapon they have. And the last thing, and probably the most broken thing about him, is the attuned engage skill, which means every time one of the 2 units that is engaged, so either himself or themselves, and the unit they're engaged with, if one of them defeats a opponent, the other one gets +4 to all of their basic stats, and they lose 1 stat per turn after that point. But there's nothing about that that says it doesn't stack, which means if your unit fights 2 or 3 opponents in a turn using Dance and Goddess Dance, the Divine Dragon can have like +12 to all of his stats for a turn, which is insane. And the same applies the other way if you want to have the Divine Dragon fight a bunch of foes and then have one like monster unit just go in and fight the boss.